Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the July 13th, 2016 Joint Planning and Zoning meeting. Item number one is on the agenda is calling the meeting to order, which we have roll call of members. Every member is here with the exception of Mr. Bishop. We need to do staff introductions even though it's not on the agenda. Ms. Patrice.
Patrice Johnson, Zoning Secretary.
Larry Buqua, Attorney at Law.
Lance Brock, zoning official.
Sean Chereau, Engineer Reviewing Agency.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
And item number three would be the chairman's comments, which the chair has no comments for this meeting. Item number four, the public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the parish council to consider the following. Zoning review identification PZ-1017.16, lot B1 of the Cloverdale subdivision for Brookwood Properties LLC, Cube Smart Storage.
Yes, sir. Brian Aguilar, representing Brookwood Properties here for this SPUD application. I think all of you have seen the packet. What we're trying to do here is a storage facility on the property that you have in front of you. As far as I know, everything's been submitted and reviewed by the ERA, and we're asking for your approval of the SPUD.
Staff?
Staff recommends to recommend to approve to parish council. This is a recommendation that will go to the council. And also I wanted to also state, I think you received something from me that the applicant was requesting a variance for the height of the building. That's not the case because they allow to have a certain height and they're going to be below that height. So I just want to let you know that or state that.
Okay.
And any comments that Sean may have.
Engineer?
We don't have any major comments, any comments at this time. We just need to make sure that this project applicant continues to work with the utility department regarding sanitary sewer connections, if it's available on LA 73. And then should this project be approved, just reminding you that the final construction details, drainage items will be reviewed at that time.
All right. We'll go ahead and open a public hearing on this issue. Has anyone signed up to speak on this?
No, sir.
Nobody signed up to speak, so we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments, questions, discussion, and/or motions. Mr. Dumas.
I have a question. Does DOTD have an ultimate right-of-way for Highway 73 in this area?
I'm not sure.
They didn't comment on it at all? Did you submit it to them? I mean, it's a state highway.
You're staring at me, Julio. I'm not aware of any additional right-of-way. The previous right-of-way, this road was built to accommodate the 3-lane section that y'all see out there was built to the existing corridor. That's as much as it was planned for. So we're not aware of any additional right-of-way or setback from DOTD. Typically, that is addressed when they have to go and apply for their DOTD permit.
Didn't they, I thought the original plans was to go 4 lanes, and then due to budget costs, it went to 3 lanes. Well, let me put it this way. I'd like to find that out, what the right-of-way is. So if you're telling me they're not going to do that until the permit, have you gone to the permitting at DOTD at all?
No, sir. We have not gone to DOT for a driveway permit, but I do have the DOTD right-of-way maps that does show the right-of-way.
Right.
And wasn't there some talk about redoing this to make it a 4-lane in the next couple of years?
That's what they've been talking about. That's why I've asked the question. That's what made me ask the question.
Yes, sir. You can come forward, sir. Please state your name when you...
Hi, Mark Abear, Curtin Abear, Commercial Real Estate. When this property was originally put under contract from the owners who own it now, the plan was to do a retail strip center, and we offered the state right-of-way, additional right-of-way for free, or the developers did. And The state came back with a comment that they would not need any more additional right-of-way from our side of the street. It would come from the other side of the street. But we offered it for free so we could make sure it was included in our plans. So just letting you know, that was in the previous plans, and that work was all done with Murray McCullough, Benchmark Properties, et cetera. So we did look into that aspect because there was talk of a 3-lane expanded to 4-lane or possibly 5 lanes. So that was addressed.
Also, we have larger setbacks on state highways, so many feet from the center line, 75 feet from the center line of the road.
Any other further discussion or questions? Do we have a motion on this?
Move to approve, to recommend.
All right, we have a motion to recommend approval to the council. Second? Motion by Mr. Foster, second.
I'd like to amend the motion. I just in case something has changed with LDOT, I was going to suggest a condition that they would comply with any ultimate right-of-way that LDOT may have for this area.
Agreed.
We have a motion to amend the motion.
Motion to amend the motion.
I second the motion to amend the motion.
All right, so we have the second, the amended motion becomes the motion, which is recommending approval subject to any right-of-way issues that the Department of Transportation and Development for the state may have. And we have a second on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any in opposition? Motion passes for recommendation subject to that one contingency.
Thank you.
Item number 4B is a public hearing to consider zoning review ID PZ-1029.16, Tract A1, A2, and A3 of the subdivision of Tract A into Tract A1, A2, and A3 for Industrial Design, Inc. Yes, sir.
I'm George Kurtz. I'm here for that.
Okay, you may proceed.
Okay. The plan that's in front of you, which I believe this was originally presented to have a rezoning, and instead of the rezoning to go to MU, it was changed to go to a SPUD. And we have met all the changes and all the requirements, I believe, with the exception of the contract agreement. And the contract agreement is still yet to be done. We have met with DOTD. We have worked with them and gotten a right-of-way agreement. We have worked with the Parish to get a servitude for a future sewer line to tie into LA 73. We will be having a plant in the rear that will discharge toward the interstate. And in this SPUD, one thing that is there is that there is a height variance, but the square footage that is being put on the property does not exceed what the previous zoning category would have allowed. Previously, you've got an 8,500 square foot building requirement per lot, and we have 8 acres, so it didn't really work for 8 acres. So what we've done is we put it into one building. So there are preliminary elevations of the building. We know we have to come back, I believe, Lance, that's correct, once we have our contract agreement and our final plan to make sure everything is in compliance.
Staff comments?
Staff recommends to approve the SPUD as submitted.
We'll open a public hearing. Has anybody signed up to speak? Nobody signed up to speak, so we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments, questions, discussions, and/or motions?
I have a comment. If this was happening in a vacuum, it would be, inconsequential. But you're talking about a 60,000 square foot office building right there, across from where they're building Dutchtown Hollows, I believe. You've got several subdivisions in the area within walking distance. You've got everybody coming off of Duplessis from the schools. You got on the other side of the interstate, you've got the Dutchtown primary, middle, and the high school, all congesting that on-ramp right there at I-10. And now we're talking about possibly throwing several hundred more vehicles on that area at peak hours between 8 and 5 p.m. Presumably people are going to work in this building and travel there and visit there. That just seems catastrophically unsafe to me. And, not something I could support for sure.
Does the traffic impact study take into account the additional traffic being created by Hollows at Dutchtown, the new school that's being built on 73?
The, the traffic study takes in account the hollows of Dutchtown. They also use future growth projected as a growth rate. They did not specifically state if they included the school in their traffic study. That's typically not a requirement to for a project per the drainage impact analysis to include future projects that have not started or gotten through the approval process.
So we don't require ghost projects that haven't been developed yet but approved? But we do include those?
We do not. They're not required.
But that traffic is on the books. It could happen tomorrow. There's no stopping them.
Are we referring to the schools?
Well, I'm talking about any development that's
No,
not
we
developed.
include, the project included Hollows of Dutchtown.
Okay.
So that's future. So obviously there's no houses in Hollows of Dutchtown. They will be
Right.
requesting a final inspection soon. So they did take, considering the proximity, the initiative to at least account for that project to be fully developed as a part of their analysis. So they did account for a development, Hollows of Dutchtown.
But it doesn't include school traffic
It does not include school traffic.
or any other public entity.
You're correct.
I mean, there's 2 schools just south of there.
They're building another one.
And they're building another one.
No,
Look, the only reason I'm going to make this comment is because I travel this on a regular basis. And I can tell you, people are going to have a hard time getting to this building at 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, Highway 73 is backed up an awful long way. Both ways. And in the afternoons, coming off of Baton Rouge, the people that commute to Baton Rouge, the traffic on the off-ramp backs up onto the traffic lanes of the interstate, and they have a sheriff that tries to push people over to the shoulder. I mean, it's comical. I mean, you can't tell me that this road actually passes, it meets some level of standard other than F.
Thank you.
I would ask a question.
Huh? 73.
Yeah.
No, it's terrible.
73 is not an
No
F.
better.
I mean, the impact study shows.
I want to know what 73 is rated at. Do we know that?
Especially in that area, right there at the interstate.
The traffic study noted that in the worst condition would be in the PM, and that would be a level of service of an E.
What is it now?
It is an E at this time.
And it's going to stay in E even with the addition of a 60,000 square foot office building?
Yes.
Well, that traffic study's not worth the paper it's printed on. I mean, that's ridiculous.
But you got to remember the traffic study is very similar to drainage. It's relative. So just the fact that y'all stated how many cars are on 73 now, okay? How many cars? Now that relative to a commercial building on a peak hour that adds 200 relative to all of those cars, you shouldn't be too surprised that it stayed within that same level of services. Those additional cars, just from that one building relative to a major corridor, 73,
But the letter.
isn't going to trip it over to another level of service.
But you're creating an over 2-minute increased delay to the eastbound I-10 on-ramp at 73. Right? I mean, am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
You're
that was-
adding 2 minutes to get onto the on-ramp.
At that particular turning movement, yes, that's what I was pointing the drainage study. But the question I was answering was the level of service of 73, the roadway corridor itself. What you're
Parking
referring to
spaces.
there as delay is a turning movement at that particular intersection.
Look at,
Let's see what stats.
And with that, I'll go open up Pandora's box. I do want to bring, this is obviously happening right after we just approved an adjacent Cube Smart storage area. My understanding, part of what is the issue here is the intention of what's being used for the space. To me, a storage area is a place that people are going to go to in the evenings or on the weekends, and they're parking their stuff there, so you're not having people come regularly visiting there during peak hours at 8 and 5. This is going to be an office building where presumably people are going to be working all day, they're going to be commuting there in the morning, they're going to be staying there and getting on the interstate to head home in the afternoon. That's going to jam up that area even more than it is already, and it's already nightmarish.
But if you've got 300 spaces, how can you say that it's only going to generate 200 trips? You got 300 cars.
This is, excuse me, this is the peak hour traffic. There's
Right.
various times of the day that people
Yeah.
come and leave a particular use.
The study also says something about there's some decreased times, and it says that this is due to changing the signal timing at the intersection. Has the signal timing been changed, or is this a hope and a prayer that somebody's going to change it in the future?
That analysis would just show that based on the cars that they counted at the time, that if they had the chance to optimize the signal based on the event that day, it would improve the existing condition.
So we're basing the traffic impact study on the hope that somebody changes the signal timing.
The signal
Correct.
timing is controlled by,
Yes, which
Okay.
traffic signals are continually monitored, and traditionally, they adjust timing based on, and if there's enough complaints in a particular movement, the DOTDs or the parishes, they will adjust the timing. So
Wow.
considering how often timing gets adjusted, that's why a lot of times in these traffic studies, they would optimize the timing of it and then continue on the rest of their analysis.
the problem here is the ones by the interstate are controlled by the state, and the one right up the road is controlled by the parish.
You know, I'm going to say this, and this is one of the things that really is frustrating to me, because 73, I've seen the genesis of 73 from being a two-lane roadway the whole way from 30 to 74, or to 61, to being three-lane through Dutchtown, and now three-lane from Dutchtown all the way up to Airline Highway, which I always thought was just incredibly stupid, because adding a third lane does nothing to alleviate traffic other than giving a left-turning motorist an opportunity to get out of the roadway, which is minimal on that. I think 73 should have been 4-lane years ago, or 5-lane for that matter. And the problem that this presents is because DOTD didn't do its job, because the state government didn't do its job, and if there's fault to lie with the parish government didn't do its job on building this roadway properly. And now we're talking about an individual who comes in here with a commercial development to develop, which is not inconsistent with that area. There's those size buildings already out there on 73. And the discussion is, well, we don't want to recommend it because the infrastructure isn't there. Well, it's not fair to him that our government has failed us on this roadway. And it's been a failure for a long time. Again, I thought adding the third lanes was just the most stupidest thing I've ever seen. Give us 4 lanes at least, and no turn lane, or 5. It wouldn't have been that much more of an increase. And I really,
It's an attractive building that is proposing.
it's an attractive building,
An
and I
addition
think it
to the
would be
area.
great for the area, and it distresses me from that standpoint, because this isn't a problem that he created, and it's certainly not, he's not doing anything that's inconsistent with existing buildings and existing structures on that building. And I understand the traffic concerns, I'm not trying to diminish those, because it is a concern, but it's not, I don't like seeing progress held back because government misallocates its funds, spends funds where it shouldn't, and doesn't get to its fundamental points of what they should be doing. And that's what we're having in this situation.
But the problem he is creating is that at least one of them is a extra 2-minute delay just to get onto the interstate. And he is directly causing that problem.
That problem wouldn't be there if this road was adequately built and expanded to begin with.
Mr. Chair, and I think to your
nobody-
point,
Hold on, we'll get back.
Yeah,
One
to-
at a time, please.
to your point, I think that, you're saying that he's creating that problem. The reality is we don't have a standard that says level of service E is not adequate. I mean, we can see it out there, know that that's not adequate level of service for the road, but we don't have any provision, any code or ordinance that says we're not going to approve a development on a road that's level of service E. We don't have that standard in the code. Traffic study works. I mean, it's telling us it's going to delay the timing. It's going to delay 2 more minutes. It's going to take you 2 more minutes longer to get on the interstate. Period, end of story. But we don't have really any code or ordinance that we can legitimately say, sorry,
Well,
you're
no,
going to
but
solve that
he's
problem.
coming, the problem is nobody.
Mr. Dudley had a comment
I'm sorry, go
before
ahead,
you
Mr.
go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Well, I was gonna say, nobody's coming and saying that he can't do with his property what he wants to do. You have to do it within the given zoning that's there. So if you want to build 8,500 square foot multiple complexes that were designed for that, which is the reason why the parish initially zoned it that way in the first place, nobody has a problem with that. It's you want to get this new 60,000 square foot property.
But it's
built
the
on there,
same
you're asking
amount
for
that if I built the multiple buildings.
But depending on what the multiple buildings are being used for, you.
But I can't control that if it's an
And-
office
and-
building.
Well,
The
and
other,
it-
And
I-
it's not your fault. I get that. But at the same point, you're coming to us, again, if it was, like I said, if it happened in a vacuum, we'd have no problem with it. But I'm looking right across the street at the Hollows at Dutchtown, and I'm thinking about the 400 cars that are gonna come out there, plus all the other subdivisions. And it would be remiss in me and my duty to say, okay, let's go ahead and rezone this thing, when I know full well what the impact will be.
Well, that gets back to my point is that, you know, regardless of what we do, the council can, if we approve this, the council can deny it. If we recommend not approving it, the council can go ahead and approve it. And what I would like to ask the parish council, and more in particular, the state, is why the hell this road doesn't meet up to par so that landowners can develop their property in a manner that's consistent with the area. That's the whole it's a fundamental problem that we have, is that we seem to be willing, and I'm not suggesting you're wrong, but we seem to be willing to say, okay, well, sorry, you bought this property, but we're not gonna let you put this building up. You can put in however many 8,500 square foot buildings because the roadway's inadequate. But the roadway was just improved less than a year ago. I mean, we just finished the improvement. For 2 years, it seemed like we were playing that old Atari game of Knight Rider, driving through the cones. I drove through them every day. But it wasn't gotten up to speed. And that gets back to the transportation master plan. It gets back to what we've talked about these last two meetings of it's the government's responsibility to put in this infrastructure so that industry and people and private citizens can get around this parish. And this is a prime example of the failure of our government, whether it be on a local or a state level, to not have this adequate infrastructure here. And I don't like to tell people they can't do their property what they want. But I agree with you to some extent. It does create a traffic problem, but the traffic problem is already there. Because we said, oh, we got a 2-lane roadway that's inadequate. Let's add a third suicide lane in here, which didn't do anything to help the problem.
Well, you created a suicide lane.
You created a suicide lane.
Keyword,
And I actually
suicide.
actually witnessed somebody actually using that as a passing lane the other day.
I see it every day.
Yeah.
I
So,
got
I mean,
a
my
question, staff, if I may.
And I would just say this, my preference would be to approve this and let the government, the elected officials, answer as to why they won't develop this roadway to what it should be so we can have it done. That's my opinion on this. This is something that is very frustrating to me. We don't have the power to do it, and we sit here and we put in these compromised positions of adding to traffic, of adding to drainage, and being criticized for that when it's our elected officials that have failed us on these issues.
I guarantee you that after I make the motion that I'm thinking about making, I'm going to have a lot to answer to some people, because they're going to call me that live on 73, and they're going to say, why did you do this to me? So, as staff, a 60,000 square foot commercial building like this.
one thing I would like to make a note, there's already an office building on this property, and it already had temporary buildings on it.
Right.
We're hardly exceeding what they had when they had all the temporary
Right,
buildings.
but that's the old MMR little office space, and that's like it looks like a little house. I mean, you're talking about building a monolith on this thing. That's quite different.
There were multiple trailers on the property before, plus the existing building. So when you say 60,000 square feet and you're aggregating it all together on the site, it looks bigger than if I put however many, 6 buildings or 8 buildings on the property of small individual buildings.
I'm going by the picture that I saw. That was presented.
Lance, 60,000 square foot office building that generates this much traffic. How does a new impact fee ordinance apply to him?
Jerome can address that.
I was going to bring that issue up, is that, this building will be subject to the new impact fee. I don't have the table in front of me that does the calculation, but it's based on the square footage of the building for this type of use. So it will be, I should say, a substantial fee.
And that, while that's not remediation necessarily for this project, it's remediation down the road. And it's the
Right.
only, I mean, it's the user fee. It's the only thing, the only mechanism in place right now. Of course, the master plan that we talked about would get other sources of funding in here for those roads, so.
Right.
Mr. Dumas, you want to make a motion?
I'm gonna hold my nose and make a motion to approve. And I don't know that I can condition you to do this, but I would ask staff, as part of my motion, that you work with staff and try to encourage the parties that control all of the traffic lights in that area to adjust them in such a manner as to minimize that delay, to the extent that you and the staff can do that.
Glad to do that.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Let's go.
I mean, I would say, and I know I don't have that authority to second it, but I would say, I would agree with that motion, and I would go to the elected officials, and even me, being a resident in that area, and say, why don't we have roads sufficient to do this? But that motion being no second dies out. Any other motions on this matter?
Motion to recommend denial.
All right, we have a motion to recommend denial by Mr. Foster,
Second.
second by Mr. Chasson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Nay. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Foster?
If I say-
Recommend denial.
So if I
Yes or
say
no to recommend denial?
Yes.
Mr. Chasson?
Yes.
Mr. Christie? Mr. Dudley?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
I'll go down as a sole no vote. We just don't have a legal basis to deny it.
All right, sorry, sir.
No, but may I ask a question? According to your current zoning, for me to be able to do a building like this without doing a spud, I would have to build a building on Airline Highway. Because it's the only place in your parish that you can build without having to do something other than mixed use. Mixed use is the only category you can build a 60,000 square foot building in. So if that's the case, just from a position of being out in the community, people in the community, you can approve and do approve subdivisions all day long, and nobody takes into consideration the overall traffic issue, really, to be honest. Yeah, there's another subdivision right now getting ready to be done at the other end down by the schools that's going to be a connector between the LA 73 and
Bluff Road.
whatever that is, the road by Spanish Lake. And you're going to have a turning circle down there, and they're going to make Seabro Road right in, right out. There are all kind of things that are going on down there at that end. Nobody's looking at what the school adds. Nobody's looking at any of those things. It's just what each individual builder or developer is going to do.
What I would recommend to you, sir, is there's a very large building right down the road from where you're proposing to build. I don't know how big it is, but it's Bengal Transportation's building, and it's a pretty big building.
Well, there's also, I think there's a Lady of the Lake building, and there are other buildings.
There's
that are-
several buildings there that,
And it,
I agree with your position, and like I said, I think this is not your fault. But
and what I would say, though, just for everyone's benefit who's up here, so you understand, I tried to work through this on a straight rezoning and was told I needed to do a spud. And in the process of doing that, I pushed consultants very hard to get this done. Spent a great deal of money designing a building, traffic studies, doing all these things. And you're going to turn someone down based on the fact that you personally don't like the way traffic is, when I, as a developer, have no control over traffic, nor do any of you who sit up there. So this is something I understand everybody has to deal with as a parish. I personally applaud the parish for coming up with a traffic study. Love to see it. But if I move this building to the other end, there's still going to be more traffic. If I move it to Airline Highway, it's still going to put traffic on LA 73. So the idea of saying no because of exactly where it is, it doesn't really change the overall paradigm of the parish.
You do understand that we're simply making a recommendation to the parish council. You've got to take this to the parish council.
Oh, I fully
Okay.
understand that, but
Yeah.
when they see a negative at this end, at some point or another, I don't know how the parish can act from a planning view when this is a problem that's been, I guess you could say, as we said earlier, foisted on y'all because you can't control traffic. Everybody's unhappy if you approve it, but at the same time, If you don't approve it, sooner or later, I've watched every other parish and city that has roads perpendicular to the interstate, and those are the one where the heaviest development goes. And if you take Segan Lane, Highland Road, Bluebonnet, Essen Lane, all the way into the city of Baton Rouge, as Baton Rouge grew out, all of those roads grew into major corridors and all wound up with major buildings.
And that just goes to illustrate my point, because I can remember when Segan Lane was 2 lanes as well, and now it's 5 or 6 lanes.
I remember, now, I'm too old for this, but I remember when Segan Lane was a dirt road, so
Yeah,
that's
so,
even worse.
Look, I don't disagree with you. If I would have voted differently if I had a vote, but obviously I'd have been in the minority, so our vote stands, and that's what it is. But good luck with the council.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff recommendation is not gonna change anyway, so he's got one in support, one not.
All right, I have we don't have any staff reports on the agenda, so motion to adjourn?
Motion.
By Mr. Chasson, no
Second.
opposition, meeting's adjourned.